Hello, everyone. Today's topic of discussion is mental health of men. I personally wanted to have one episode specially dedicated to this particular subject because I feel that although there is a lot of conversation around patriarchal bias, a lot of things still remain unsaid and are pushed under the carpet when it comes to the mental health or discussing the mental health of this particular gender. So, our guest today is Purnima Gupta. She is a psychotherapist with over 20 years of experience in her field, and she's based out of Ahmedabad. Please share this episode with all the people who you think might find this useful. And I would request you to please support this initiative by subscribing to the Winged Fables YouTube channel. Until then, enjoy this episode. Hello, Purnima. How are you doing?
Hi, Nazneen. I'm great. And how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine as well. Thank you. And it's great to have you for this recording. And I look forward to having this conversation with you.
I'm equally excited.
Yeah. Purnima, our topic is a little bit different from the usual topics that I have discussed so far. We are going to discuss about the mental health, particularly of men. So the first question that comes to my mind when I think of this topic is usually men are considered to be the stronger gender. That's the general notion. Do you think that this is right, and or do you find a problem with this thinking, and why do you think so?
First of all, Nazneen, whenever we label something about anybody, not really men or women in general, but about anyone. For example, if you label something as sweet, if you label something as nice, then your mind registers it.
Hmm,
And next time when you would meet the person in a different setup, when the person is also in a different mindset and you are also in a different mindset, but your mind would prompt you to look at that person and only notice those nice things about him because he's registered as a nice person. So,
hmm,
the basic problem is that we judge people, we label them, and once those labels have been picked up, then we take a long time, and rather it's next to an impossible process for most of the people to change those labels. There's no flexibility. So since the ancient times when men were performing duties which required physical strength, they got
hmm,
this label of being strong. People were not cognitively looking at mental strength or emotional strength or the social presence. The only thing men got labeled as strong was due to the work they were doing, the physical strength.
hmm,
And we are
hmm,
still continuing with that label. We are not ready to change that. The scenario has completely gone an upside down makeover.
hmm.
Men today are performing duties which do not really require physical strength, but rather more emotional regulation. But we haven't been able to look at that side. And
Correct.
today, females are performing duties which require physical strength,
Hmm.
and there is no talk
Right.
about it. So, I think labeling is the major issue behind what we are thinking or talking about today. And if we can get over these labels, I think we would be flexible enough to incorporate and take a 360-degree look at what a man can do and what
Hmm.
issues he or she suffers. Not just, the men, the women also need the same flexible approach. No labels. I mean, can we be individual? If I meet you, then can I just register this thing that, okay, Nazneen has got very good articulation skills and not generalize it. So, one thing is labeling, and the second is generalization. That because you saw 60% men performing physical work, we labeled 100% of the men for the same.
Hmm. Right. So I think this also means about the overcoming one's mental filters and biases that we have, that we see in daily walks of life. So I think the labels come from our own perception of how we see things. If you correct me if I'm wrong, if that is what you meant, right?
See, labels come because human mind functions on the principle of certainty.
Okay.
Uh, it seeks assurance in everything. Now,
Hmm.
if you look at the ancient knowledge, the Eastern knowledge specifically, I would say, uh, uncertainty is the way of life. We have been told to believe in uncertainty as the way of life. But human mind
Hmm.
is always running after assurances, security, information, knowledge, because knowledge is security. And these
Hmm.
labels or these categories that our mind creates, whether it is in terms of labeling someone as a good person or labeling someone as not so good person, both the
Hmm.
categories are to create a reassurance within our own mind that, okay, now I am sure what is this person about. And if the person
Hmm.
deviates from this category, then I will be anxious. Then I
Ah.
would be, out of my comfort zone. Then I would be disturbed. And that is something I am not looking at. So, in all
Hmm.
possible meetings that I probably will have with you, I would like you to be in those categories which I have created in my mind during our first meeting.
Right.
And that is also something that creates the relationship issues in the longer run because people defy those categories
Hmm.
and we are
Yeah, I,
put
I
into the
completely.
anxious zones.
Right. It's more about people being into their own comfort zones and being probably finding it difficult to walk out of their comfort zones and then, facing their fears. It's like, as you rightly mentioned, the idea of certainty and uncertainty. We're always scared of uncertainty. So yeah, it makes sense. So what all are in today's time, as you already spoke, that the roles of men have widely changed as compared to what they were centuries ago, or maybe perhaps what they were decades ago. So in today's time, if we talk of what are the various emotional, social, um, cultural pressures, psychological pressures, or issues which men face.
So let's go step by step. So first thing first, I don't think there is a very clear line or boundary for any gender for
Hmm.
any specific role. You know, today it is more about acceptance and flexibility. That do I have that flexibility in myself that I can do whatever comes to me? Because we are seeing that people are also living alone completely by themselves. So that also makes them not dependent on anybody or not expecting anyone to do their chores or, cook for them or clean for them. So if I have to do everything for myself, then I think the very boundary of what I can do as a gender is blurred. So
Hmm.
I think it's more contextual and circumstantial into what role can we see a man performing or maybe a woman performing.
Hmm.
So that is something
Okay.
that I'm very clear that let's not put this into the boundaries that, okay, since you are a man, you have to earn, you have to protect, you have to provide, you have to take care of your family. No, not really. You do what you like, you do what allows you to express your individuality. You
Hmm.
do what allows you to express your unique nature and personality because that's also somewhere connected to this thing called purpose of life. We cannot put people into existing frames because it kills their individuality. Yes, to a certain extent, when we are living in a family system, we are supposed to adjust, but not compromise. I'm supposed to adjust because when four people are living together, of course, everyone has to adjust to accommodate the rest of the people. But I should be ready to adjust, not to compromise. Because that frustration of not being able to express my uniqueness, my individuality, I'm going to show somewhere else. Or if I suppress it too much within, then it is going to lead to certain other emotional challenges.
Hmm.
So this is
Okay.
something that I strongly believe when you talk about, roles that men can perform today. And now looking at the emotional, social, cultural challenges, is that what you meant? The challenges or?
Correct. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, the challenges that the men particularly face.
so I think first thing first, the challenge that they face in terms of emotional development or emotional expression or regulation is that the other gender is equally rigid in terms of perceiving how a male partner or a male family member
Hmm.
should be. You know,
Hmm.
now if a man is okay with crying in front of his family members, the family members may not be okay with his crying.
Hmm.
And in
Right.
that particular scenario, it would be equally difficult for the man to continue his expression. Because if you don't get the appropriate support when you express yourself, then next time you probably would stop in your shoes for a moment and then think, should I express
Hmm.
myself? So
Right.
we consciously are not snubbing their expression, but our behavior, our approach, our response, and our acceptance of their emotions is probably giving them a message that I am not okay with your emotional expression. It
Hmm.
makes me anxious.
Right.
Because while you have learned that it is okay to cry for a man, I, as a woman, or I, as your family member, haven't yet learned that as a family member, I need to support both men and women, irrespective of gender.
Hmm. And how can that happen? Let's say what I make out is that not just men, everyone somewhere is scared of being judged. And sometimes we tend to lose our identity. We start acting as the other person expects us to be,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
act, right? And because more or less we're scared of judgment. But how can, let's say I or any men, since we're talking about men here, like they cannot be afraid of being judged, and how can the family members or the friends have an open outlook of looking beyond the gender roles or the typical conventions which they have put in their minds.
So, Nazneen, I probably would quote a little from the ancient scriptures or texts or the philosophies here because, to be honest, our psychology in its current state has yet not really found an answer to this question because
Hmm.
we are looking at everything in an interpersonal setup, whether it is emotional expression, whether it is the response to that expression, whether it is someone's inner thoughts about his own expression. And I'm using these gender oriented pronouns only because we are talking about men,
Yeah.
but it applies to everybody. Like, look at the question. You are asking me how others can be more sensitized
Yeah.
towards accepting when a man is expressing himself. My
Right.
thought or my question has always been why everything has to be looked upon in an interpersonal dynamic. So, a certain sense of detachment and a certain sense of individuality has to be instilled during the early years of a person. If
Hmm.
I am not taught that my expression is my expression,
Hmm.
people should never be responsible to act or respond in a certain way to my expression. Let me set people free from this expectation that when I express myself, you're supposed to respond in a certain manner. But this can only happen when we allow people to be individuals and not look upon them only as one of the community. Because every time you are telling someone that, the person is not understanding what I'm saying. But why do we need to understand?
But then how can the conversation, like suppose if the other person is not understanding what I'm saying, then um how can the conversation further, or how can you have a balance of understanding, or what's the meaning of communicating if at all there's no
Hmm.
understanding when one person is speaking and the other person is not able to get what the other person is expressing?
So I think the response can itself be that I'm sorry, I'm not able to understand what you're saying, but I definitely hear you.
Hmm. Okay.
Understanding
Okay.
is the
Makes
second part. The first part is, am I present to your speech or am I present to what you're saying?
hmm.
The whole pressure of responding to someone in a certain way kills the authenticity of the communication. For
Okay.
example, if I cry in front of you and you are not able to make head and tail of it, why should this be a pressure for you? No matter how
Hmm.
close a friend you are to me,
Hmm.
can I not set you free from that pressure? Can I just expect you to sit with me in silence and allow me to express myself?
Yeah.
Here, I always tell my clients also, when they say, my family doesn't understand, I always tell them that here is the problem, that you are expressing yourself with a certain expectation already. You are not
Hmm.
expressing yourself to relieve yourself of all the pent up emotions. You are releasing or expressing yourself with an expectation कि दूसरा मुझे समझेगा. The other person will understand me. That's the later part of the story.
Hmm.
The
Okay.
first part
But
is,
then why?
hmm,
Yeah, please
yeah,
continue.
the first part is always a free flowing expression. And that free flowing expression doesn't demand a response. What it demands is active, empathetic listening. That's it.
Hmm. And what happens? So if there is someone who is listening to me empathetically, or if I'm just expressing myself, what difference does it make to the person who is expressing himself or herself? Why is expressing so important?
Because he's seen. He feels that he's seen. He feels that he's heard.
Hmm.
Trust me, this has immense power. I have witnessed this in so many sessions and even in my personal life, that when I'm not
Hmm.
responding anything, I'm just there for the other person. It has
Hmm.
tremendous healing power.
Hmm. Okay.
When I
And
even express myself with an expectation that the other person will understand, I am more focused upon his response and not on my expression.
hmm.
And wherever
Okay.
cognitively we get involved in the process of expression and understanding, the whole emotional connect from the situation is broken.
Okay. Hmm. Many times, it happens that there are people who are bad at expressing. They tend to suppress their feelings, and especially because of the social cultural setup, we have seen this with men. Like I have personally seen this with men, that they are not very expressive. They probably want, because I have brothers, I've lived with my father, my partner. So usually what I feel is that men, they want you to understand without words. They want people to understand them with less words. Yeah, they use very few words, and usually it is seen, or I could be wrong, that if people around them don't set up or don't come to their expectations, then they tend to become a little bit angry, lose temper. In worst cases, they also tend to become violent. Um why is this, and how can this be overcome, and how can someone identify that there is actually an underlying problem when a person is not expressing, or suddenly blowing up because he or she has not expressed anything so far?
So, two things here. One, we have restricted expression to language,
Okay.
that to verbal language. The non-verbal aspect of the communication or expression has almost been wiped out. And
Hmm.
it has got its own reasoning because everybody is so tied up or so, you know, occupied in their own worldwide stories that
Hmm.
non-verbal communication is not just being addressed. Now,
Hmm.
people want that if you have a problem, come and tell me. Don't expect
Hmm.
me to look at your body language, look at the eye contact, look into your eyes, and I understand that you're in pain or you're troubled.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the second problem that for long, for centuries now, this word power has been negatively associated with love and an expression of concern. And
Hmm.
in other contexts, the power has been associated with masculinity.
Hmm.
So, a child growing up in a house where after shouting at him or after slapping him, his parents tell him, we slapped you because we love you.
Yeah.
We slapped you because we did not want you to suffer any negative consequence.
Hmm.
So, the association that the mind is making there is that it is okay to slap someone who loves you or whom you love.
Okay.
And men grow up with this association because since
Hmm.
childhood, when they slap their friends or when they kick their friends or when they kick their siblings, also, parents always say, it's okay. Bada bhai, he's your elder brother, he's your younger brother. It's okay.
Hmm.
And the same thing continues in the adult life also when the pent up emotions, let them so crazy with their inner circle, the most intimate people, that the only way they can release that pent up emotional energy is either by shouting or by raising their hands or by being physical with them.
Hmm.
So, power and the language being taken as the only mode of communication, I think these two are the major issues, the core issues.
Right. Okay. And then, how can someone identify this problem early on? That maybe there is some build-up problem, mental issue, as you said, because of XYZ reasons, what we
Hmm.
discussed right now. How can someone identify this and try and address this by himself before approaching a professional person to help him out with this?
So, the most common sign of this problem, or the lack of emotional expression, or lack of connecting with one's own emotions in men, is
Hmm.
they would start being very objective about things, day to
Hmm.
day life. Very objective,
Hmm.
say, I would mean, they'll be like, okay, checklist has to be ticked. So, did
Hmm.
I call my family? Yes. Did I go to my work? Yes. Did I finish the tasks assigned to me by my boss? Yes. Did I eat two
Hmm.
meals? Yes. Did I drink my coffee or my tea? Yes. So,
Hmm.
all of those things, when they start performing as if they are, on a time machine or
Hmm.
mechanical performance, that is when
Hmm.
we need to understand that, okay, ye, this is the problem. They are running
Hmm.
away from intimacy. When they start being very dry about any conversation, they take those conversations as a matter of fact.
Hmm.
When they are playing games with their friends, when they are joining their friends for sports activity or for any gymming or workout activities, only because it is to be done, not because it makes them happy.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
these are the earliest signs which they should be noticing in themselves. And after that, then it could be, judging other people who express themselves, not being okay with
Okay.
their family members' emotional expressions,
Hmm.
finding it difficult to deal with somebody who is disturbed or somebody who is crying or somebody who has taken ill, then they are
Hmm.
not okay with those things.
Hmm.
And the final expression is when a man cuts down on the amount of communication with the family members in general, which
Hmm.
I am sure a lot of us have observed the men in our family, like towards their midlife or post retirement. These men are
Hmm.
there, but their expressions are very matter of fact expressions. They don't talk about the real challenges, the real issues. Neither are they interested in listening to their partners or family members' issues. They are like, okay, do this, ho jayega. Do this will
Hmm.
be solved.
Hmm.
But there is
Okay.
no willingness to sit down and look at the gravity of the problem and understand it because it stirs emotions in them which they are not familiar with. And it's very, very anxiety provoking for them.
Yeah. Okay. And there is a lot of taboo around therapy already, and especially when it comes to men, I believe that women in general are considered to be vulnerable. So it's very much okay for her to go and have a therapy session professionally. But do you see many men coming to therapy sessions? And like, do you agree with what I'm saying that men in general are a little skeptical in going for therapy because of the taboos related to the subject?
Yes, men generally do not approach therapists, of course, because of the already existing taboos, but also
Hmm.
because of some real time challenges like taking care of a family. So, not being able to prioritize themselves. Uh, so,
Hmm.
they would like to spend the same money and the time with their family instead of investing it into a good therapy session, even though there is a problem. The second issue
Hmm.
why not just men, but very few people approach therapists is because they believe family time is the best therapy. We have been fed such beliefs that developing a hobby, joining a hobby class, or spending time with family, taking regular vacations, managing good diet, and so on and so forth are the best ways of therapy. No doubt, these are therapeutic activities. But when it comes to decoding your own emotions and being more regulated in your emotional expression, that definitely requires professional help. But we are
Hmm.
yet to reach there.
Hmm. So, how is professional therapy or going for a therapy session different than involving yourself into a hobby or trying to align your emotions by spending more time with your family? Uh, how is it more effective? If you can explain that.
So, a professional therapy session puts you in a zone where you are in the spotlight. And when you are in the spotlight, you can't escape. You can't
Hmm.
escape experiencing those anxieties, those fears, those nagging questions which have been buzzing in your mind for long. But somehow,
Hmm.
through your family time, through your vacations, through your work, through your hobbies, you have managed to silence them. But
Hmm.
in the therapy session, there are no such defenses. You're there with your issues,
Hmm.
with your challenges, and the therapist is there as a facilitator. not as someone who will provide you the solutions. The solutions will come once you are ready to sit with yourself. I always tell people that if there is a problem, it has its own solution hidden in itself. But
Hmm.
if you want to know the solution, you have to first learn to be okay with the problem. You have to first
Okay.
sit long enough with the problem so that it can reveal its own solution to you. And that's what the professional therapeutic space is about.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about men or women in general who would, want to spend more time with their families in order to relieve their tension. So that is how probably all of us are trained. Um, so I would just like to, take this opportunity and talk a little bit about the gender roles again. We have touched it very briefly towards the beginning of our conversation, but what I feel in general is that men have this added responsibilities of shouldering the household expenses. Let's say if a woman, to put it very directly, if a woman, especially in our culture, is taking care of the household, and if she's not working, that's fine for her. That's not an added pressure that she has to work. Right now the women are working, and taking care of the households is a different thing, and that adds on to her mental pressures and taking care of all the other things, and that is a different story. But if a man chooses to take care of the house and probably not go out and work, then that is again frowned upon. So I think there is a lot of social stigma also associated with the gender roles in general, that puts a lot of pressure on men. Although there's a lot of talk about patriarchy and many many different things, biases, gender bias, pay scale bias, but still I feel that there are many such topics which are not discussed, and we just close our eyes upon these topics, and there is a lot of pressure on men as well when it comes to these things. Do you agree, or how do you see it?
So, not just in terms of household chores and professional work, I think the very basic notion which is not right in our culture is the idea of what a house is. I think
Hmm.
we are yet to diversify the type of households because till now, up until now, I would say 95% of the people believe that if you talk about a house, then it has to have certain elements. For example, regular cooking, cleaning,
Hmm.
washing
Hmm.
dishes, doing laundry, taking care of there has to be
Hmm.
some souvenirs kept in the living room. There should be a TV. There should be this, there should be that. So I think the
Yeah.
diversified idea of a house is still
Hmm.
not familiar to us. We are not okay with the idea that two people living in a 1 BHK, it is completely okay to not have a fully functioning kitchen.
Hmm.
We are still not okay with an idea of a house where people live without furniture.
Hmm.
We are not okay with the idea of people sending their laundry or outsourcing their laundry work.
Hmm.
For us, houses get up in the morning, do these chores, cook, clean, have your breakfast, and then rush to office, then come back to the same kitchen and stand there and cook for yourself and feed the family members, irrespective of genders.
Hmm.
Of course, the pressure is more for women in our culture, but these days even men are facing that same pressure that once you have 9 to 10 hours of professional life, even then you are supposed to eat at home. And that is the reason that the professional restaurants or the eateries do not offer us the luxury of homemade food. They still offer us the professional food cooked in a
Hmm.
professional kitchen. So I think the
Hmm.
very basic problem is we need to still diversify what is a home. Home is where your heart is, not where chores are.
Yeah.
So I think this
Yeah.
very concept of household chores in itself needs to be done with.
Right. Right. It's a nice way of seeing a different perspective, I think.
Philosophically, if you look at it, I think the four ashramas that we always had the concept, the Vanaprastha ashram, which begins at the age of 50, around your midlife, the whole idea of Vanaprastha ashram was this, to do away with the existing notions of house, family, chores, and spend more time in self reflection or introspection.
Hmm.
So we already
Right.
had these ideas, but the problem is that the social system has somewhere left these core ideas behind, and we have become all about earning, spending, cooking, cleaning. That's it.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. Uh, is there anything that you would want to say in general, particularly to men, because we are talking about this subject, how they can take care or keep their mental health in check? Just some general points, if you can share.
So, in general, as I began with, I would first say that we need to do a sincere check into our own mental beliefs as men. I guess every
Hmm.
man needs to look into his own beliefs. That is he also into, being a provider or a protector to his family and not thinking about himself? Because it has become a very shaming idea for men or for women. Whenever they think about themselves, they are shamed. You're being selfish,
Hmm.
you're being self centered. And I think we need to now get over this and above this and
Hmm.
prioritize our individual happiness and satisfaction and contentment first. Because I think you can't pour from an empty cup. If
Hmm.
you are happy, you will you will spread that happiness to others. But if you yourself are not happy, you're going to
Hmm.
create the same frustration around you,
Hmm.
where a lot will depend upon whether people fulfill your expectations or not.
Okay.
And as a
Right.
strong believer of individual identity and work, I always feel that we need to prioritize ourselves in everything that we do so that we don't expect others to make us happy.
Hmm.
The biggest challenge is that we expect everybody around us to make us happy, take care of our happiness, be concerned with whether their actions or behaviors or relations with us would be good to us or not. Why? Can I not decide what makes me happy? Can I not
Hmm.
know what makes me happy? And once I set all my relations free from this burden to make me happy, I think the relationships will blossom.
Hmm.
We will connect with each other because we want to connect with each other, not because it is necessary to avoid loneliness.
Hmm. Right. Um, in the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned about adjusting versus compromising.
Hmm.
Uh, I would want you to elaborate a little bit more on that. What is the difference between the two?
So, for me, adjustment is all about a conscious recalibration of your desires or your actions or how you look at things or how you would want to spend that particular hour or time. Whereas
Hmm.
compromise is where you have done something in the name of a relationship, in the name of making the other person happy, and you're not conscious
Hmm.
of it. You're doing it because you've been taught to compromise, because you have been taught to prioritize others.
Hmm. Okay. And one question that comes to my mind as we were talking is that does it happen that usually a woman who has probably some issues and would want to go for a therapy session would want to have a woman as a therapist, and a man would prefer to go to a man, maybe because they feel that the if the or if the gender of the therapist is the same as his or hers, then there would be a more empathetic conversation. Yeah, the understanding would be better. Does it happen in general?
With women, it does. They do prefer the same gender person, but with men, it's the opposite. They prefer a woman to be there
Okay, and why is it so?
because, again, a belief in them that she would listen.
Hmm. Okay.
And second, the other man as a counselor probably would
Hmm.
have the same biases and the perceptual errors like mine.
Okay. Okay. I get it. Yeah. Is there anything that you would want to add to this conversation?
Nothing, just that I think everybody needs to believe in himself or herself, not because it is the needed thing, but because this is the thing. There is
Hmm.
no two ways about it. If you are not the center of your life, you cannot be the center of anyone's life.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Purnima. I think I had a great time and a lot of new perceptions. I think I have to do a lot of rethinking. And probably when I listen to this podcast again, I'll have a little bit of more questions, I'm sure, and I'll come back to you maybe through an email or through our WhatsApp chat. But thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to communicating with you again.
Thank you so much, Nazeen. It was equally refreshing and wonderful for me to get to know you, to share my thoughts and expressions. And I hope that our listeners or audiences would love what we have discussed in general.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Purnima.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.